Everything begins in a peaceful and cozy little village where, inside one of the homes, a family waits with great anticipation to discover which class the son will be blessed with, even though he doesn't seem nearly as excited as the rest. His little sister, however, is overjoyed, already certain that her brother Errol will receive the most powerful class of all. Their mother comments that, if that's true, he'll probably become very popular with the girls, but the jealous younger sister quickly argues that Errol is far too young to be thinking about such things. Their father adds that, at Errol's age, he himself was always surrounded by pretty girls, but none of this seems to impress his son, who remains distant from the conversation, even though the idea of being granted a class is also on his mind. In this world, the goddess blesses every human with a class upon reaching the age of 10. Along with it come the skills necessary to perform that role, which could range from being a mighty sorcerer to something as simple as a village baker. After the family gathering, the long-awaited day finally arrives. The ritual of blessing begins, and one of the community's priests steps forward in the town's temple, standing before a statue of the goddess. Soon, the first child is called to the stage. The priest touches his staff to the boy's forehead and immediately feels the power of flames, along with the scent of iron and hammer. With that, the boy is declared a blacksmith. As time goes on and the children present themselves one by one to receive their classes, Errol's sister is brimming with pride over their family's bloodline, convinced it will influence the blessing and grant her brother a powerful class. When Errol's name is finally called, everyone holds their breath, eager to know the future of the village's most famous couple's child, the Sword Princess Farah and the Archmage Leon, both renowned for their advanced classes. On stage, the priest instructs Errol to close his eyes so that he may feel the goddess's blessing, but the boy feels nothing. The priest, too, senses nothing at all. The audience begins to murmur in unease at the absence of any response. After carefully analyzing this rare case, the priest delivers his conclusion. Errol is a child with no class. His sister protests in outrage, refusing to accept it, while his parents are left deeply disappointed. Afterward, Errol is back at home, practicing with a sword in the yard. While his parents try to console him, they explain that he doesn't need to worry about getting a job, since they will still work even after retirement. But Errol insists that he doesn't want to be a burden. His little sister, trying to act like the older one, promises to help him just as she always has. Frustrated at always being treated as pitiful, Errol calls his family together and makes one thing clear. He doesn't care about being classless. He has been studying fencing with his mother since childhood, and even if he didn't receive a class, he can still wield a sword. One day, his hard work will pay off. His mother is moved by his maturity at such a young age, and his father believes that Errol will be able to turn fate to his favor when he grows older, just as his sister has always believed her big brother is the best. Still tired of all the sentiment, Errol excuses himself and goes to the training grounds. When he arrives, two boys are sparring, each showing impressive sword techniques. They boast about how amazing it is to have a class, since they can feel strength flowing naturally from within. When Errol approaches, they immediately recognize him as the classless boy from the ritual and ask what he's doing there. Errol explains that he came to train like anyone else. One of them smirks, saying that as swordsmen they don't even need to train. Coming here is just to test their abilities. To prove it, he calls his partner back, and the two resume their duel, once again demonstrating a power Errol never had, and, in their eyes, never will. Each strike echoes through the air with such force that it feels as if two grown warriors were clashing rather than children. Watching carefully, Errol thinks to himself that the first technique any swordsman learns is basic fencing, which alone makes them skilled fighters. But he doesn't want to just stand by and watch. He calls out, challenging either of them to spar. The cockier boy bursts out laughing, mocking him, but Errol answers with confidence, saying it will still be a fair fight. Enraged by his certainty, the boy demands to know if Errol at least has the goddess's divine protection. Even without a class, Errol replies that he does. Divine protection is another blessing from the goddess, but unlike classes, it is granted to every human at birth. It is like an invisible web that surrounds the body and absorbs damage. Still, if one takes too many hits, the pain eventually comes through. Satisfied with that, the arrogant boy agrees to fight, though Errol warns him to be ready to eat his words. The taunt makes him furious, and in a burst of anger, he charges before the duel is even officially started. Errol reacts swiftly, not only blocking the strike, but twisting his blade to break the boy's guard. This only fuels the boy's rage. He swings again, but Errol blocks once more. From then on, the fight is firmly under Errol's control. Unwilling to accept defeat, the arrogant boy calls his partner to join in, and the other quickly agrees. Errol narrowly avoids a cowardly strike from behind. But he doesn't complain, he relishes the challenge. Fighting two opponents his own age feels like useful training, especially compared to the countless beatings he's taken from his mother at home. In the heat of the fight, the arrogant boy scolds his partner for attacking poorly, which makes Errol wonder if people with classes ever learn teamwork. Judging by the chaotic way they fight, maybe they're easier prey than they think. Convinced of this, Errol steps forward and knocks down the scrawny one of the duo with a sharp blow of his sword's hilt to the chin. Now there's only the alpha left, the so-called final boss, who threatens his opponent with big words. But when it's time to prove himself, he trips over his own partner and leaves himself wide open. Errol smacks the back of his neck with the flat of the blade, he doesn't even use the edge. Otherwise, heads would have rolled. As if losing under those conditions wasn't humiliating enough, the pair still mutters that Errol cheated. Since they won't accept defeat, the three of them agree to a rematch. But before it can happen, another boy steps into the training grounds and tells the losers to cut it out because in a real battlefield, no enemy will care about the whining of two clowns. The cocky one immediately curses him, but his partner tells him to pipe down, since that redhead is serious trouble. The redhead approaches Errol and recognizes him as the son of Farah, the sword princess, pointing out that only her son could handle a blade with that kind of skill. Even so, he warns Errol not to let victory get to his head. Then, he challenges him to a duel, just to show this so-called classless boy what a true swordsman is capable of. The skinny one whispers to the cocky one that the redhead has ties to the captain of the guard, and the redhead himself confirms Captain Evans is his father. At the mention of that name, Errol remembers Evans as the man who once came to his house to call his mother out on a demon hunt. The son, however, looks nothing like him. The father's appearance was far harsher and worn. The redhead bristles at hearing his father's name and makes it clear that not only is the captain a master of the sword, he's also a respected leader among all. Still, the son can't understand how Errol's mother could be considered the #1 swordswoman of the village. Annoyed, he asks Errol if he agrees with that, and Errol replies without hesitation that his mother is, in fact, the most powerful person in the village. The redhead smirks, reminding him that children inherit the strength of their parents, and that's why he's going to beat the brat down and prove his family is far superior. Besides, he's been a swordsman for over a year and already mastered intermediate techniques. Surely, he'll wipe the floor with this kid, and since Errol has shown from the start that he's not the type to back away from a fight, the two clash right then and there. This duel is clearly a step above the last, impressing not only the previous rivals but also the redhead himself, who admits the match is more balanced than he expected. Still, he has a trump card up his sleeve. Meanwhile, Errol notices that his opponent's anger is making him sloppy. That recklessness could be a weakness. He takes advantage, deflecting a strike. He crouches low and goes in for a piercing counter with the enemy's guard wide open, but the redhead reacts instantly, unleashing his twin blade slash. Errol blocks the first strike, but the second slams into his divine protection. Clutching his wound, the boy can't understand how his rival managed to land 2 strikes at once. The redhead seizes the moment, sneering that a classless like Errol could never hope to defend against such a technique. Still, he admits the kid's got guts for even accepting the duel. Days later, Errol is jolted awake by the most annoying alarm clock on the face of the earth, his little sister. Half asleep, he jumps up and accidentally headbutts her, which ends up being a kind of accidental revenge. At breakfast, she begs her big brother not to push himself so hard in training, because one day, she'll create a world where he can live in peace. Hearing that, Errol can't help but laugh warmly before heading out. After he leaves, she worries aloud he's been staying out late every day, coming home beaten and bruised from his relentless training. To calm her, Farah takes the girl to a chest full of broken swords, every one of them snapped during Errol's practice. In other words, the boy knows how to handle himself. Still, even reassured, his little sister promises to make the world a better place for him. Meanwhile, Errol dives into his daily training and shows he's mastered the twin blade slash. Turns out, he let himself take a beating just so he could study and learn the move. Right on cue, a goblin jumps out from the bushes to ambush him. Errol ends it swiftly using that very technique. But then, a deep, chilling roar echoes from within the forest. It signals something far worse lurking in the trees. Terrified the village might be attacked, Errol rushes toward the guards, but the desperate scream of a child pulls him straight into the woods. There, he finds none other than the redhead lying wounded. Standing before him is a hobgoblin, a monster that never shows up in these lands. Several larger goblins lie dead around the training grounds, proof that the redhead fought them off before. Sizing up the hulking enemy, Errol realizes he needs to focus more on his footing than his wrist. Timing will be everything. With that in mind, he steadies himself, adjusts his stance, and unleashes the twin blade slash at the perfect moment, bringing the beast down. Afterward, he notices the redhead's holy water smashed on the ground. Without hesitation, Errol hands over his own flask, letting him restore his divine protection. The redhead recovers almost instantly, only to demand how a classless like Errol managed to perform the twin blade slash. Calmly, Errol explains that he had to train hard to master such a complex move. He also points out that he studied how the redhead used it again and again during their fight, and it was by enduring those blows that he managed to learn it later. Finally, Errol adds that he still wants a rematch, and this time, the redhead accepts because after all, the boy had just saved his life. Since that's how it was, the two of them wasted no time and clashed right then and there. Right from the start, both unleashed the twin blade strike at the same time. But Errol's power carried one extra slash, so when two cuts from each fighter canceled each other out in the collision, that final strike broke through and landed squarely on target. The redhead scoffed, reminding him that the skill was called twin blades, not triplets. Errol just shrugged and explained that he didn't bother with such limiting details. What mattered, he said, was shaping a technique so it served you better in the heat of battle. The redhead wasn't about to accept a lecture from someone without a class. He raised his sword once more, recalling how he had learned fencing from his father, Captain Evans. Losing wasn't an option, not to anyone, and especially not to a boy who hadn't even been granted a class by the goddess. One way or another, he knew one thing for sure. He'd have to stay sharp against this opponent. And yet, even though he had sworn to watch out for that third slash of the twin blade, he fell for the same attack again and lost the duel. Breathing hard, he asked if Errol had gone easy on him in their last fight, because this time he was clearly much faster than before. Errol shook his head and explained that it was thanks to his rival that he'd been able to see his own limitations and push past the weaknesses that had cost him that first defeat. A few days later, over tea in the evening, Farah mentioned to the family that Evans's son had left for Brescia that very day, a place known as the City of Swords where Farah herself had once been part of the local guild before she married. Hearing that, Errol felt a pull in his chest. He longed to go to a place like that too, but the thought haunted him. How far could someone without a class really go? Even so, one thing was certain: he wanted to find out, and the only way to know was to try. Check out these videos appearing on your screen and subscribe so you don't miss the next part.